U7Buy provides the most convenient, fastest, and safest way to upgrade your team with numerous positive reviews and verified by top creators from different countries with 24/7 online customer support. Before the end of October, all users who place an order for FC26 coins on U7Buy for their first order of FC26 coins can enjoy a plus 10% coin bonus. Using my discount code Inception can get an additional 8% discount. Guys, it's been a while since we've done an evolution video. I think there was only like one evolution video that we probably could have done, but the other ones are not really like worth reviews for because there's not really much to talk about, right? With this one, the improvements are quite significant for specific stats. So we're going to go ahead and see what the options are. So obviously, the first one that's trending here is Paul Pogba because people know that with his body type and height, could be really nice to have, right? So let's take a look at what the evolution does to begin with. If I take breaks in between, just forgive me because I still have a dry cough, right? But let's go ahead and see what this thing actually gives, right? So a lot of it comes down to like some stat improvements. You get a weak foot adjustment, skill move adjustment. So by default for 10K, this is already really cool, right? So some of the upgrades that people are kind of going with is the center mids for the most part because they want to make them generally balanced, right? Because you're starting off here at 65 and you're ending off at 70, just like as an example, that's a really big deal, right? So Paul Pogba being the main card that is trending is specifically for that reason. Now, obviously with this card, the upgrades, I'm not going to say that it doesn't feel significant enough because doing this now and then hoping for an evolution in the future is what you're going to be looking for the most part, right? So because he has the 5-star skills, the 4-star weak foot, I would say at least as of right now, I would still probably use this card as like one of 3 center mids, right? In the current meta, the like-dislike ratio for this one is in a warranted spot because the thing about Pogba is that he has aura, but if you were to do this evolution, it's because you kind of hope that he gets certain improvements in the future, right? Because right now it's more a matter of giving him some stat improvements, and it looks like this stuff is the same unless it's a plus in some area, but yeah, because I didn't see anything when it came down to the role pluses specifically, but yeah, you can see here the big difference is obviously the defensive boost. So with Pogba, not really super upvoted, right? There's going to be some different variations where people have been doing improvements over time, right? So you have this one here where people put him into Iron Will, Cam upgrade, so on and so forth. You know, it gives him a classic 10, maybe at some point in the future as you continue to upgrade him, it could be better, right? But the thing is that people kind of aim for the stuff right now, so that's where it's a little bit off, right? Now, with Loftus-Cheek, I would say it's a little bit different because with this card, we already know that base card stats wise, he's already set up in a good area when it comes to potential improvements from an evolution like this one, because you actually give him more significant improvements for a card who is a lengthy player on an anchor or even a shadow, right? So let's say, for instance, you wanted to play a card like this, playing in that center mid spot. Maybe he's on that playmaker, maybe he's on that box to box. It could be really cool to use a card like this. There has been a recent evolution chain that existed for Ruben Loftus-Cheek that was pretty solid, right? Because at the end of the day, the card doesn't have any defensive stuff, but you would just use them as that sort of box-to-box sort of player, right? Cam half-winger, I probably wouldn't do that just yet. That's like a future upgrade, right? Because his dribbling is way too low for that. But I would say that this card on a shadow is not really that poorly formatted in comparison for a 10K upgrade. Like I said, be mindful because there is a current chain evolution that, yeah, I think it puts them at like 84 defense or something, but you do have to put a lot of your evolutions towards that sort of upgrade, right? So yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at some of the other trending options here, but those two are obviously gonna be the top ones. Where it gets more interesting, in my honest opinion, is when you start to choose players that are more sentimental to you, but still get really, really nice improvements. Because here's the thing, right? So if you go to like Esteval, for example, you're giving him a defensive boost. Is the defensive boost that relevant for Esteval? It's not. We got to be completely honest. But where it becomes really nice is obviously from doing some chain evolutions, making him into a pretty usable attacker, right? So let's say you were using him on the right mid position and you actually utilize a whipped pass from one of these playstyles here that actually gives him the whipped pass plus. then that could still be really cool, especially if you're like a Chelsea fan, right? So what you would do is you would search some of the best chain evos if you haven't used these things yet, which I'm going to be real with you guys. A lot of people have not used some of these evolutions because there hasn't really been anything that's like an interesting chain evo, right? But Esteval is a pretty cool example of building a card that is sentimental that could still be really cool, right? Because if you are the type of person that could see yourself crossing the ball in the side position, which can be effective in this year's game, especially from the counterattacks, this is not like a horrible improvement, because with this card, you would give him a hunter chemistry style and the usability is there, right? You have mid 80s for shooting, which is a pretty decent area. You have a card that is also a 4-star, 3-star player, but he's a left-footed player, but still can be played in the cam position. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to play 4-2-3-1 or something like that. You could totally do that, right? But he does have that inside forward. He does have the finesse shot, so the usability is there if you wanted to use him on the right-hand side, cutting on the inside too, right? So yeah, stuff like that's obviously really cool. But then you have some other options here where, again, for this specific Evo, because of the defensive stats specifically being improved, this is where it could be really cool for some of the sentimental stuff. So with a card like Bajcetic, right, your main priority of using a card like this in your team is going to be using him as an actual CDM, right? So because you're using him in the actual CDM position, EA are basically creating a way to give you a super quick variation of a card that could be sentimental to you, right? So with Bajcetic, sure, doesn't have shooting capabilities, but what does he have that's really nice? He has a lengthy on a shadow chemistry style, right? So if I give him a shadow, I keep him on a lengthy, I give him that pace improvement, I give him the defensive improvement, and it's a well-formatted card specifically for that CDM spot for someone that wants to do sentimental, for a card that's not super expensive. It's like 20k, right? If you actually go down this route for the evolutions, right? So that's where, again, this one, it becomes interesting for people, right? It's the upgrades that you get specifically in certain areas that makes you usable right off the get-go, right? So that's obviously really cool. Again, you are going to have some attackers that could be of interest to you. I probably wouldn't go down this Gabriel Jesus route, even though they give him a passing boost, which is nice. You would do this in hopes of a future upgrade as well, I would say. But at the same time, I still think it could be pretty cool, right? If you're like an Arsenal fan, it's not like a horrible choice, right? Because you would just give him a hunter, have better pace, have better shooting, and it would be like a generally well-formatted card. But it probably wouldn't be the direction that I would personally go through, right? Like these ones would make more sense, especially if you think that they're going to get like future improvements, right? Like with Gray, you're giving him this sort of evolution for the defensive boost, but then in the future, you're kind of hoping for something else, right? There's like other stuff here too, that obviously he's going to have really nice improvements on. But remember, this being the current best version is not always the best version in general, right? Because it depends, because sometimes you'll improve the card to be up until this point, and then another evolution comes out where the improvements are even better, right? So just be mindful of stuff like that. So you can go that route. You can go on the route of improving players that already had good base card stats in certain areas that improves them drastically in other areas too. For instance, with Mateusz Nunes, he is by default a midfielder as a center mid. So the fact that he gets this right back improvement, it could be pretty cool too, right? Because on a card like this, you know, you give him a shadow chemistry style, you have someone that could potentially cross the ball in. So let's say, for instance, you're the type of person that actually likes to cross the ball. Maybe having a fullback that can cross to the far post or to the near post could be something ideal that you'd want to work with, right? Especially if you're working with some sort of Portuguese team. But again, if you went down this route, you are working with a card that you have to, you know, drastically improve as you go on, right? So you have to be mindful of stuff like that too. There's cards like Kessié, which would make sense, like meta-wise, because obviously he gets pretty significant improvements. I would see this card honestly being played as a CDM for the most part. Deep line playmaker probably, because deep line playmaker, these guys can still be the types to defend. The only thing that I'd be mindful of when it comes to this card specifically is I probably wouldn't give him the whipped pass plus. I'd probably go in a different direction because that's pretty pointless for his card, unless you think that he can make a good right back in the future if they drop some sort of evolution for that, right? So that's where it's a little bit weird for that card too. Curtis Jones could be a good start as well. There are different variations where you can drastically improve him to be a little bit better, but this one is a pretty nice improvement in the hopes of getting some sort of other variation of an evolution, right? So yeah, so far The ones that like are the main ones going to be Loftus-Cheek. You got Esteval for the attackers, right? Like those ones can be really sick too. I'm trying to see if there's other ones that like kind of pop up here. This one could be really sick, actually. Right back with whipped pass plus is not bad. I think he's a lengthy player too. The only thing with this card is that your dribbling on the ball would probably be a little bit weird. Is it that big of a nuisance? Not necessarily, because in this year's game, the left stick is a little bit better. So if you're using a more physical-oriented player in that position, it wouldn't be a horrible decision. He still has some defensive play style. He still has a long ball, which is actually very helpful. But it's a long ball with tiki-taka. The jockey could help out with the physical aspect of the card. And what's interesting about him is that, sure, you could use him as a center back if you really wanted to, but the problem is that you're giving him whipped pass plus. So you're doing a card like this with the intention of utilizing him in that way. The whipped pass part, I'd probably avoid giving that to most of the players, at least on a personal level, because I don't really cross the ball that much. Not to say that it's not an effective playstyle, because if you get players that have like that, I don't know if it's aerial fortress that makes them good in the air, or if it's something else. I forget what it is exactly. But if that's a playstyle that you go with, then again, you can kind of go down this direction of giving a right back a really good improvement, right? João Felix gets a pretty drastic improvement as well. It does make him a better attacker, which is pretty cool, because obviously base card stats wise, it is pretty low in a lot of areas. What's cool about this card that some people will probably do just for this variable alone is basically getting a cheap card in your team that has a hunter chemistry style on him, but has 5-star skills. That's the huge variable with a card like this. Now, I will say that on a personal level, you know, even though I like my Portuguese players, the female players are always going to move better when it comes to the left stick part specifically, right? But again, because the dribbling mechanics work differently this year, the left stick on this card might actually not be that bad, right? Because the dribbling is not in a horrible spot. He still has a technical first touch. He still has good shooting play style stuff, still has a long ball. And another thing to mention is that when it comes to play style specifically, inside forward for the left mid position would be good because he has the finesse shot. And then the shadow striker for the cam would also be a really big deal because let's say you're giving him a hunter chemistry style and you actually want to use some sort of variation of a 4-2-3-1 narrow. You could do that with a card like this and use him in those side positions, right? So that could be a really cool thing to be able to utilize on a card like João Felix as well, right? You have some other cards here like Gomez. Gomez is a Brighton player. Is he a lengthy on this? Unfortunately, he's not. Is he a lengthy on an anchor? I'm gonna be honest with you, it's just the whipped pass though. I'd probably just take that off. But if you had a card like this sentimental-wise for Brighton, it's not horrible. In the future, he could get a better improvement. I would probably still give him a shadow and keep him uncontrolled, but I guess it all depends as well, right? Because lengthy would definitely be a really big deal. I think I'd like that more, probably in the CDM position. Again, the whipped pass part, we're going to ignore that part because I wouldn't do that. Like, I would only give a whipped pass, honestly, to a player who's like a right mid, and that's only if I actually utilize that sort of play style, you know? That's a pretty good improvement, right? Premier League player that plays in Brighton, can't really go wrong with that. Again, this is the route of people giving some of their attackers that they don't want to wait for like promo cards on, like Garnacho, that gets an improvement right off the bat so that they can kind of use him right away. With this card, he is 3-star, 4-star, so he doesn't really have that many skill moves, so it'd be a little bit sus to go down that route, but again, he wouldn't be like a super horrible choice. There was another choice up here, McKennie. McKennie was an interesting one too, because again, generally well formatted, right? Has the CDM position change. So what I'm curious about is if he's lengthy on a shadow. Probably even, you know what, to be honest, lengthy, oh, well, he's not lengthy either way. Because I was going to say, like, yo, if he's a lengthy on an anchor, even that would be okay too. But even still, guys, honestly, at this point in the game, if you were to give a card like this a shadow chemistry style, use him, I would say mainly as a CDM, probably on that deep lying playmaker. The card still looks pretty good, right? Like no whipped pass, right? But just has the passing play styles, no defensive things. But to be honest, there's a lot of people using players in the CDM position that don't necessarily have defensive play styles, and they could still do a pretty solid job in the game, right? So just be mindful of that too. But again, that's kind of like the general area of where you want to improve your cards, right? It's these midfielders that have general improvements that can be good at both attacking and defending. And if they can rotate into those positions, even better, because we do always have to consider future evolutions as well, right? Whenever they do come out. Nusa is from Leipzig. You have Yildiz who gets one. Kone would make sense as well if you're a Roma fan and you want some improvements there. Because again, I think he would actually get a thing on a he would get a lengthy on a anchor chemistry style. Definitely for more improvements in the future. If you're comparing a card like this, right? Because Shadow Chemistry style, good pace, good defensive boost. Let's see here. Matthias Tell, Elliott. Pellegrini would definitely be one of them too, but that he still needs like one more defensive one. One more. Even though this card's not really that poorly formatted for like the Roma players. I'd probably use them as a box-to-box mainly. The cam stuff is irrelevant. I probably wouldn't do that. Bellingham for usability right away is not necessarily a horrible choice. I want to see what people are trending on the bins for this one. Midfield Spark, popular. Yeah, so Jones Esteval for the attacking boost is really good. Reuter is there. Hannibal, that's an improvement for now, and then in the future you get an evolution that could improve it. Jones, Loftus-Cheek, Pogba. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? I would personally do a card like this with Froholt and make him more usable, 100%. And then slap a nice little shadow chemistry style on him. Because then at some point in the future, he can get an improvement. I will say he's probably going to get like a team of the season card, but this is just like an improvement that you get right now, especially if you're using some sort of like FC Porto team, you know? But again, with a card like this, you need to hope that he gets some sort of improvement in the future. Because the thing is, man, is that like the problem is that we only have like super meta gameplay game modes, because if they didn't and they had like a good proper tournament mode, which they should, but they're brain dead for that, this card would be really cool. Because I'll tell you this right now, man, like I've used cards in the draft that have shooting like this and dribbling like this, and they could still shoot and dribble in certain situations. They're not like completely unusable. And in his case, because he has a pace and a defensive boost, the usability is there. Meta wise, if I'm up against meta players, it's a different situation entirely, but you know what I mean. For me, might not be bad either, eh? Having a cam that could actually defend would be interesting. It would probably be more interesting for the inform if he had some sort of variation, but it's just like these other ones here. Because imagine that. That'd be actually... that'd be pretty crazy, to be fair. Then you got some pretty cool choices like Fred. Fred could be pretty interesting too. Probably like a more agile sort of CDM on that shadow chemistry style as well. But then like some things are kind of missing. But again, Sentimental could be really cool for that. But yeah, I think you guys get the gist. It's either you go in the route of getting an improvement right away, or you go in the route for a card that could be getting an improvement in the future. Like Froholt is a very, very good example. And I've lost him. Froholt was a really good example though, just because of the general improvements he receives for the potential of an evolution in the future too. So it's either that, or you get some really cool chain evolution like Esteval. Even Esteval doesn't even have a chain evolution on this one specifically. It's the other one where he has the chain evolutions. Like these ones, I think. Or the one on GG's is actually the one that shows the better one, I think. Evolutions. Yeah, so you see some of the Sentimental ones are popping up a little bit more. Kessier's there. Vajic is a player from Sweden, so good Sentimental there. Tomiak can get one. Right? The Sentimentals for this one are really cool. Because like for me, if it was like Sentimental, let's just like take a look, right? We won't go nations. We'll go to Liga Portugal. And let's just see what happens, right? So look, if you're a Sporting fan, you can get a nice little improvement from there. What's weird is that Froholt is an option here, but they don't really show that one for some reason. So, but yeah, that's like generally how you want to choose your cards, right? Like the Sentimentals for the midfield will be really nice. Some of the midfield options that already exist, that already have good base card stats that get improvements afterwards, can also be really nice, right? It just depends on your direction of the game. But as of right now, 10K is not bad for the simple upgrade that they get right now with potential in the future. Okay, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today. We'll leave it there for now. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you guys for next one. Peace out, dudes. Love you guys.